You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about Spikes at miaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution and trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-evolving Options Insider Radio Network. Again, glad to see so many of you joining us there on the Options Insider Plus, Options Insider Pro Legion. Legion is growing by leaps and bounds. It makes me excited to see you folks are so excited for all this fun stuff. You want to learn more, kick the tires for yourselves, theoptionsinsider.com/plus or /pro/shop will get you to all of it as well. It'll let you compare everything, see what's going on. So you get not just all the fun shows live throughout the week. You get, of course, the pro Q&As every Tuesday. Those have been really fun so far. Got another fun one lined up for you next Tuesday. Got Options Oddities coming up a little bit after Volatility Views today. So you get your double dose of exclusive content and a whole bunch of other fun stuff over there. Private podcast feed, all that cool stuff, and a whole bunch more. theoptionsinsider.com/plus and /pro are the places to go. And of course, while you're there, keep hitting us up with those questions, those comments, those insights, those pearls of wisdom, however you listen, live after the fact. If you're one of our members, if you're just listening on the old podcast device of choice, we love you all. Keep those questions and comments coming. We do love to hear from all of you guys and gals out there. Let's see who we're hearing from on the old show today. First, joining us from, who knows if he's deep in the heart of Texas or perhaps ranging somewhere to the south there. Let's find out. He is the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the program. Where are you holding court from today, sir?
I'm back in beautiful Austin, Texas, enjoying this nice hot weather and The stars at night that are big and bright.
I hear they got the first name storm heading to your neck of the woods these days. So it's that time of year again, sir.
Oh, lovely. Can't wait.
You traded January in Chicago for summer around the Gulf. So interesting stuff there. An interesting trade. I think we can debate both sides of that as we keep on rolling out onto the MIAX hot seat, where we are joined by a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is SAAD HUSSAIN, the founder and CEO of VESICA Technologies. SAAD, welcome to the Volatility Views program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege. Thank you.
And SAAD, as we are wont to do with all of our first-timers here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a little bit of an overview of your background in the options and derivatives world, as well as what the heck it is you guys do at VESICA Technologies.
Sure. Thank you. My background is really quickly, I was an oil broker, originally from Houston, Texas. Worked in London and New York and all the rest of it, learned the chops of derivatives in the commodities market, actually. And we started VESICA Technologies with what's called the shiftsearch.com or MIAX.shiftsearch.com, where we allow anybody to see instantly market color at any given moment in the world of equity options. We've done this across multiple asset classes. And but we wanted to really strengthen our legs and flex our muscles a little bit when it came to the largest feed in the world when it comes to financial data and the equity options. So anybody can now go search and instantly see market color across any equity that's trading.
Cool stuff. We're going to dive right into it as we get on into the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Volatility Review. This is indeed the portion of the program we break down the week that was and indeed still is, from a vol trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity and all sorts of perspectives across a broad spectrum of volatility products. And coming into today's show, markets taking a bit of a break out there across most of the major indices. We're seeing S&P kind of being the Goldilocks again, but that Goldilocks is off close to a full percent, off about 0.85%. We got the Dow leading the charge to the dark side, off about 1.25%. And we got NASDAQ off around 0.5%. So a lot of red on the screen today. More sellers than buyers, as they used to say when I walked on the floor of the SEBO. And that saying seems more apropos than ever these days. For whatever reason, can't catch a bid out there today. But the vol products caught a little bit of a bid coming into today's show. So all those folks out there, Jim and everybody who was feeling a bit of upside to the vol screen this week, looks like they are going to be our winner chicken dinner this week. So much for the Rock Lobster. And is very bold. He went out on a limb yesterday on the option block. He was calling for a 15 handle by the close today in VIX. Doesn't seem, unless there's a massive turnaround, doesn't seem like we're going to have that by the end of the day today, because coming into showtime, we had spikes at around a 19.5. That's a wee bit higher than we have been of late. It's about 3.5 points higher than it was this time last week. We have VIX cash, because closing in at a 20 when we kicked off the show is about 19.75. That's up exactly 4 points from where it was this time last show. And it did break the 20 handle ever so briefly earlier today. It looks like it got up to about 2020 twice, actually, today. So it did break a 20 handle again today, which is kind of interesting. It seems like an eternity ago we were celebrating it breaking 20 to the downside for the first time. That seems like a lifetime ago, even though it was, a couple of months ago now. But here we are, now back nosing around the 20 handle again in the other direction. Is this a sign of things to come, or perhaps just a momentary blip? We shall get into all that fun stuff. VVIX obviously moving again up to about 125. It's up about 10 points from where it was this time last week. So a lot of stuff going on in the broad market. But SAAD, you are our guest, so we will start with you. By the way, our audience already excited that you're joining us today, SAAD. Our members in the live stream saying, "Is that the guy who started Shift Search?" I love that. So there you go.
Oh,
our audience are already users and fans of your product there, SAAD.
Oh, wow. That's very kind. Thank you so much.
So let's kick it off, SAAD. Obviously, a lot going on in the world of volatility. You guys focus on a lot of cool stuff. You kind of gave us the broad strokes really quickly. Let's break it down a little bit further. Obviously, a lot of our live listeners are familiar with your product, but there's a whole audience of people out there who haven't tried it. So if they go on out to miax.shiftsearch.com, which John Smolin has mentioned on the show in the past, we've talked about that URL a few times and sent our audience out there. You mentioned they could do a search on the equities. Like, what can you do with this? What can they do when they go to that URL?
Sure. So it starts from my experience of working, and just like anybody who's professionally worked in the field of Wall Street or whatnot, you have to understand market color. You don't just go out and buy a house because I tell you to go out and buy a house. You probably look at comparable home sales in the neighborhood to see what's happening. So using that same analogy and concept, we want people, instead of just buying something because you heard it on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, take a quick search at it. See the flavor, see the pulse of that particular stock or the market as a whole in 2 seconds. Right. And just like, you would have to have a lot of guts to, you see a wave of selling happening in a particular stock and bunch of puts coming in. And if you want to buy some calls, all right, that's your prerogative. But the point is, we want people to really quick take a speed break and really understand what's happening in the market before diving in. And in the end of the day, that speed breaker allows you to kind of take a macro view of the look at the market and then dive directly into a particular stock and see the flow and really visualize that flow. And that's where we come in, because we want every data point to tell a story. And that's been my mantra. Every data point has a story, and you should be able to back solve from that story and really tell yourself what is happening in the market. And a lot of the times the flow does show that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and listeners, it's a pretty cool thing if you haven't checked it out, miax.shiftsearch.com. You can't beat the price. It's free, so go. All you guys are always hitting us up saying, what's a good analytics platform? What do you use to do this analysis? What do you use to do that? And obviously, we use a lot of different platforms when we're doing something like Options Oddities that's coming up a little bit later today to go out there and scan and find this UA out there. But this is something that's available for you folks completely for free, so it doesn't cost you anything. If you want just informed access to the flow, this is a good place to start out here. I can't imagine, SAAD, they always say sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart, right? I can't imagine a better time to be launching a platform based around unusual options activity than, let's say, in the early part of 2021, where we've seen more unusual activity and more unusual activity. It's just the weirdest stuff you've ever seen than I've ever seen before in the history of this business. So you have good timing on that front, son.
Yes, we're privileged on that, and we're very grateful and on that. So yes, I mean, our user base and stickiness is just growing really at ridiculous numbers every week. And it's one of the coolest times to be actually understanding and really taking a fresh approach to what's happening in the world of equity options. And because, like you said, all of us have experience in this market, but this 2021 scenario, and starting from 2020, has been so unique because there's so many new money that's come into this market, new kind of people, new different types of thought process, which has influenced this market greatly. So it's just a fascinating time to be, and we're privileged to be in this space right now.
A lot to unpack there. We'll get to all that single name goodness in a minute. But right now, really quickly, what's lighting up your tape over there at VESICA? What's some of the hot volatility action you're seeing coming across your screens this week, sir?
Sure. I mean, if you look at the VIX itself, I mean, we can just because of how the Fed was talking this week, we saw a lot of caution coming in, and that's the beauty of looking at flow on, you can look at it through volume by hour or whatnot. And we saw how the VIX was trending, and then it came back off. And then today you can see exactly how that's behaving. So VIX, VXX, all these guys, and especially spikes. I mean, it was building up, and then it kind of slowed down, and then now it's kind of like cooling off as we head into the weekend.
Cooling off indeed, but the vol is not cooling off. The vol is spiking. Mr. Meatball, obviously a lot to unpack out here this week. I know you were buying a lot of upside in your crystal ball pick last week. So from that perspective, you were prescient, but you also say that you're always just fading your book really at the end of the day, and you don't mean your upside buys. So what's lighting up your tape in this week where at least towards the end of it, we're seeing a little more vol on the screens than less, sir?
Bullard is lighting up my tape. That's what's going on. One of the Fed governors came out this morning right around 8 o'clock Eastern. You can literally watch the S&Ps just tank as soon as he opens his mouth, because he said, I expect us to raise rates next year. And as everyone knows, our dot plots say 2023, not 2022. The market, no like that say, and we took it on the chin. And yes, I'm looking great for the crystal ball. My book, not as happy as my crystal ball pick right now. So, I'm really interested to see how we close today. Are they going to play a little rope-a-dope and ramp things up? We had quadruple witching this morning and absolutely blew through the 4200s, which was a pretty big strike. And that gave us a lot of momentum early in the day. And we've just kind of sat on that since. I'm looking, and settlement in the SPX was 41.87 1/4. We're literally sitting right there. The Russell 2259, the Dow 334.24, and the NDX 14,107. So we're literally sitting at basically exactly where we saw settlement. So this is an area where, on the line, we're going to see how this thing fights out. Do we make a run back over 4,200 into SPY expiration, or is the market going to absolutely puke at the end of the day? Normally I have an opinion, but the last couple of days trading's been so weird that I'm not exactly sure which direction we're going to go.
Yeah, we are kind of poised on that precipice right now. You're right. The market seems like it doesn't want to hang out here for the rest of the day. It wants to go somewhere. It doesn't want to go further down. Doesn't want to erase some of this sell-off. Yeah, we're kind of teetering right there right now. What do you folks think out there? Let us know as we keep on rolling into the vol products out there to the vol futures first. Coming into today's show, obviously a little bit more juice back in that front portion of the curve coming into showtime. Obviously, the June future now gone the way of the dodo, so we got July moving up to take that precious front month slot there. That's up about 1.6 points from where it was this time last week. The AUG future coming into showtime's up a little bit north of a point, about 1.3 points. So Mr. Meatball seeing a little bit more inflection, a little bit more juice baked into that front portion of the futures curve. Anything catching your eye out there from a VIX futures perspective this week, sir?
Yeah, the curve was pretty muted all week and kind of took off today. We've seen a pretty nice shift in VIX. It's like I said, the VIX is up nicely. That futures term structure still in a contango, but the back end, that NOV, OC, DES has flattened up. And so we really only have a contango across the first 4 months. So we've definitely seen the curve flatten. Still a nice spread between July and AUG and SEP, but then things get pretty darn flat. So a pretty nice shift in the curve, and certainly not nearly as bullish as it was last week.
Not nearly as bullish. You are correct, sir. Let's see if there's anything bullish out there in the land of the volatility options. Let's head on out to spikes first. We had a little bit of rotation out there in the spikes OI. Remember last week we had mostly June positions on the top positions in spikes options. Those are obviously gone now, but we had a lot of new positions coming in to replace them. Looks like in particular on Wednesday, we saw a pretty sizable put vertical to finance a call vertical. Looked like it was the July 18-16 put spread going up 1,000 times for a $1.01. Looks like paper sold that against buying the July 22-30 vertical, also 1,000 times for looks like about 86 cents on the call vertical. So actually got a little bit of a credit to do that, which is kind of interesting. And that trade, at least so far, seems to be working out. That was the right way to have that. But Mr. Meatball, I know you've kind of in the past have been a little bit reluctant about putting on upside in some of these vol products. What are your thoughts on this? Selling these put spreads here to finance a little bit of vertical call action and spikes. You like that trade, sir?
Totally makes sense. I mean, that's a good way of creating a hedge. And if you're going to hedge, I use spikes or VIX, not the ETPs. And this spread completely makes sense. You're taking in a credit on the put spread and to finance that upside call spread. Currently, that's working. I'll be interested to see whether the trader sits on this or starts to do something with this sometime today. So far, they're still sitting back and waiting. Might be looking for another leg higher.
Yeah, you hate to say take it off at the first blush of any upside, but if past his prologue in the world of vol options of late, you got to take your spikes, pun intended, while you got them. So he may live to regret this if he doesn't take at least some of it off. So we'll keep an eye on this. But again, he didn't put this on for a few cents. He wanted a nice pop to the upside. So he got a credit. So he's got a little bit of time to wait here. He's not really burning a lot of cash on this trade. So he can afford to probably be a little bit more patient with this than perhaps if he had paid a sizable debit for it. But still, interesting stuff here afoot. Be interesting to see if we do see him taking this off. It does seem like a lot of the size paper we have seen in spikes. Remember our 1x2 guy last year and stuff. A lot of it seems biased towards the upside, and that seems to be the case yet again out there in spikes options. Moving on out to VIX options. Not a ton of paper on the VIX options front today. Struggling to make 300K right now, about 275,000 on the tape. So as a result, you might imagine that ADV has dropped a wee bit since our last show. I was kind of surprised it was still north of 600,000 on our last show, quite frankly, because most of the days last week were at 500,000, if not less. So coming into today's show, it's a lot less. The ADV is about 536,000. That's down about 77,000 contracts from last week. So that's no small amount. We'll see if all this vacillation out there in VIX options and in VIX itself can drive a little bit more paper. So far today, the surprising answer is no. I guess upside in VIX doesn't really excite people right now. Right now, let's see what excites them from an overall options positioning perspective. What are the size positions that are open in VIX options right now? Let's find out. Cost you 125,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX land right now. That actually isn't a ton for VIX. That gets you to the first of 4 calls in our top 10. It is still 60-40 puts to calls. That hasn't changed for about 3 weeks out there, which is also kind of interesting. And you know what the top 2 are. I don't even need to tell you those lists. Those have been open for a while. We got the 125,000 of the July 50s, 5-0s for number 10. That's the same strike that's open for size and spikes as well. So somebody likes the July 50 strike and likes it for size in both VIX and spikes. Number 9, 132,000 of the July 20 puts. Number 8, 142,000 of the July 15 puts. Number 7, our second of 4 calls in the top 10 here, 147,000 of the SEP 25s. Then we got a whole bunch of puts, listeners. Number 6, 149,000 of the July 18 puts. Number 5, $1.60 of the July 21 puts. Number 4, 218,000 of the July 17 puts. Number 3, 269,000 of the July 16 puts. And then you know what the top 2 are. The big dog. It's that July 25-40 vertical. We mocked it last week, looking a wee bit better this week. Not a ton, but it's better. It's certainly getting back some of that decay that it has shed since it put out. To go back and see exactly what price they put that on for. It's been a little while now, but that is the number 1 position still in VIX land, with number 2, the 40s, with 269,000 contracts, and number 1 is 298,000 of the July 25. So that strike has added on a few more contracts. Not surprising. It's a little bit more relevant strike than the 40s are. Mr. Meatball, what are your thoughts on that ongoing debate over the July 25-40 vertical? Looking a little better this week. Would you get the heck out of Dodge and cut your losses now, or you think this guy's going to ride it for a bit? And then anything else catching your eye out here in the world of VIX options this week?
Yeah, I've been surprised that puts have outpaced calls by a pretty wide margin. This week, there's been a ton of trading in July. We continue to see that. Biggest trade today, a customer sold about 27,000 of the July 17 puts, maybe getting out of Dodge on those. But we've just seen, we continue on the open interest side in July in VIX to see really big open interest in July, at the money and downside. There's over 100,000, really close to 150,000 on every strike from 18 down to about 15. The 14 and a halfs are busy, and the 19s and 20s still have open on 100,000 as well. So we're definitely seeing some continued action on puts. The lack of call trading is I think eyebrow raising, and it has to make me wonder what's the deal, and what's going on here, because we should be seeing just a ton of activity. And in fact, I'm looking and volatility is actually falling off a little bit here from earlier in the day when these things were a lot higher.
Well, let's see what the vol market had in store for us this week. Starting today, like I said, not a lot of paper on the tape so far today. We've got 275,000 contracts on the tape, your top 5 most active contracts today. You got the July 17 puts, 35,000 of those. Then it falls off a cliff, listeners. Number 2 is only 16,000 of the July 20s. Number 3, 15,000 of the July 18 puts. Number 4, 14,000 of the July 21 puts. And rounding out the top 5, about 13,000 of the July 22 calls. Not a lot of call action, even on the day when we have VIX spiking a bit to the upside. Yesterday, Thursday, was a more active day, 519,000 contracts on the tape. We've got our most active yesterday was the SEP 16 put. Interesting contract, doing 67,000. Also see the July 16 puts going up 53,000. Probably a bit of a roll going on there for number 2. Number 3, 33,000 of the July 18 puts. Number 4, 29,000 of our favorite strike there, July 50s. And number 5, 23,000 of the July 17 puts. Wednesday, also a little bit more active day, 554,000 contracts on the tape. Our most active was a bit of a put vertical there again, 45,000 of the July 16s, 42,000 of the July 15 puts for number 2. Number 3, 32,000 of the AUG 16 puts. Number 4, 30,000 almost exactly. Back to SEP again, the SEP 16 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on Wednesday, 24,000 of the July 17 puts. Tuesday was our most active day of the week, at least so far. It doesn't seem like today's going to beat it, though. 751,000 contracts on the tape on Tuesday. The most active contract, the June 16 puts, 53,000 of those bad boys on the tape for number 1. Number 2, about 52,000 of the June 18, so perhaps a bit of some vertical action there again. Number 3, 42,000 of the July 20 calls. Number 4, 41,000 of the June 17 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on Tuesday, 29,000 of the SEP 25 calls. So a little bit of SEP upside action. Haven't seen a lot of that. Monday, 564,000 contracts on the tape. The most active contract, the July 17 puts, with about 38K of those, followed by 37,000 of the July 18 puts. So it seems like a little bit more vertical action going up there on Monday. 35,000 for number 3 of the June 17 puts. Number 4, 33,000 of the July 16 puts. A lot of 16, 17 put strike action going up this week, listeners. And rounding out our top 5 on Monday, we've got 31,000 of the June 18 calls. We can keep going in the vol space for a bit, but I know, SAAD, a lot of the vol that's been lighting up your tape has been coming on the single name front. So maybe let's head over there for a little bit, because it's kind of hard to discuss volatility these days and ignore what's going on in the single name realm. I mean, you got AMCs topping our most actives almost every day. You've got names like Clover and, your Rocket Mortgage. Hell, Ford is becoming a meme stock these days and is blowing up the charts. So, when we used to do our most actives and talking about what was dominating the option space in our shows like the option block, it was always your Apples and your Teslas, and everything else was a distant second below them. And now we have AMC toppling them and a bunch of other, and AMD got up there the other day. So we're in kind of this wild period from a single name volatility perspective side. So I got to imagine a lot of this is lighting up your tape. What are some of the hot names that are burning a hole in Shift Shirts right now, sir?
Absolutely. So one of the cool things on Shift Search you can do is click on the orange button, which is the activate stonks mode. and notice the language of stocks, which is the meme way.
I take personal credit for that. I know when I chatted with you, I suggested a meme mode. You can never have come to that of your own volition, sir. It had to be through my suggestion. So clearly my input.
Absolutely. So if you click on it, what happens is you'll instantly see the trending meme stocks right off the bat. We do due diligence behind making sure people know. So you don't have to guess of what's happening looking on Twitter and Reddit and stuff. It's there. And, look at AMC. I mean, you can just see how high the vol is on AMC because we now have premium allocation or the dollar amount that's actually trading within these stocks now. And AMC, I mean, on the week, it's over like $2 billion. And to put it in perspective, the SPY trades, it's been beating SPY on a daily basis in terms of dollar amount as well, which is just incredible. That speaks to the vol of AMC.
Yeah, AMC, I mean, we could do a whole show on just the madness that is AMC. Mark, I have to imagine this type of trading is kind of what shows like Options Oddities were designed around. Also, what your gamma radar kind of stuff was designed around. I mean, it's hard not to notice and hard not to talk about a stock that's trading somewhere in the $50 range, and the 145 calls that are going out today or next week or pick your poison are trading around $1. I mean, these are the insane things that we're seeing out there. So I got to imagine, Mark, this AMC absurd action is lighting up your tape as well, sir.
Oh yeah, it's bananas. And the volume is just absolutely nuts. I mean, 24,000 of the 145 calls have traded today, and they're trading at a 400% volatility. That is just nuts. But it shows you that there's still some real squeeze in AMC. I thought it was coming off, and now we've seen vol start to pick up a little bit in AMC, and AMC start to climb higher. This is one where the calls. It's hard to argue that call spreads don't make some sense if you think this thing's going higher, because you get to sell upside at really whatever price you want.
Yeah, normally you'd say this is, manna from the heavens, gifts from the gods, right? You're paying $1 for these ridiculous calls. And yet, it's gotten so out of hand. The brokers are jacking up the margin. So it's no longer the free money type bonanza that it once was. You have to commit a wee bit of capital to this trade now, either owning the underlying, which could be a dubious thing, and obviously in the name that's trading now $60 odd and was trading $7 not too long ago, or have some other meaty options against it that you have to have something on now. You can't, obviously selling the naked wings is not something we recommend, even at something absurd like the 145 strike. But also, just the margin requirements alone are getting out of hand. So you can't go out and just blast away on the free money AMC like you used to back in the days there out there. SAAD, any other interesting action in the single name realm lighting up your tape? Obviously, AMC is kind of the insane one, but what else is lighting up your tape? What are people profiling and looking at and searching for over there on the easy for me to say, shift search tool these days?
Sure. This company called Wish, Context Logic.
Yeah.
They've just been insane, the amount of skew buying that's happened in calls in this week alone. It's so insane that you have your standard Apple, AMC. I can't believe I'm saying standard AMC now, but AMC and Tesla's on the tops. But Neo and Wish have been breaking up really nicely in this week's flow. And there's this other company, Itaú Unibanco, the Brazilian bank, that's had it's just been dominant. It's been insane.
Oh, the Itaú. They had insane verticals going up earlier this week. Yeah.
Yeah, that sucker saw just massive volume in traders unwinding June and putting on just huge upside in July. Exactly. Itaú, and PBR is another one that's, I don't know what's up with Brazil, but they really like Brazilian banks that deal with oil. I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen Rio jump on board with that group, but it has not. And just AMC, you can buy the 70-145 1x2 call spread for $4. What? What? I mean, what? I mean, and that's for next week. That's for next week. You don't get hurt on that thing unless it settles at like 220. What? I'm flabbergasted, Mark. I am flabbergasted.
And you literally can't get hurt because there is no 220 strike. So we all know it can't go there, right? If the strike doesn't exist, it cannot go there. That's the rules of the options market. So there we go. There's literally no downside to that trade out there. But yeah, these are the types of things, like I said, coming into this year, I would have said these things will not happen, let alone happen repeatedly and for size. And yet it seems like someone out there in the AMC land has just said, okay, what is the highest strike we can get to hedge our exposure, improve our margin, require whatever the hell they're doing out there. They're just saying, okay, 145 is the highest strike you got. We'll take them. How are they now? We'll take them again. I mean, you're talking 30,000 a day, 80,000 some days of this strike that is completely ridiculous by any objective measure. And yet you can't even sell it anymore because things have gotten so out of hand out there. So that's the world we're in, listeners. But it's a fun one. It's a good one if you're active, if you're listening to shows like this and you're pretty nimble out there in these markets and you're not getting crazy short units, then you should live to fight another day. And hopefully, and maybe on your own little small, we'll keep it reasonable, small private island as a result of all your judicious trading activity out here. Another product you folks have been pretty judicious about and certainly like these days is VXX. Not exactly doing the erosion dance today. Coming into showtime, it was at about a 33. That puts it up a little over 2 points, almost 2.5 points, about 2.3 points from last week. It's been a while since I said VXX is up on the week, but hey, it was threatening to break the 30 handle not too long ago. It was off nearly 10 points, nearly a quarter of its value it has already shed. So it's done a little bit of that erosion dance. You can't be too mad at it if it has an actual update. Coming into today's show, it actually was decent paper, about 193,000 contracts on the tape as of a little while ago out there. Let's see if that has improved. It actually, a little more has gone up now, about 239,000. So that's a pretty active day out there for VXX. That ADV is a lot less than that. It's 196,000. That's down 11,000 from our last show. So obviously going to see a little bit of a bump in that this week. It seems like finally, the issues with the symbology and all that other VXX1 nonsense are hopefully behind VXX. We won't see that ADV dwindling as much anymore. In terms of what's lighting it up out there right now, what are the top positions in VXX? Looks like mostly still legacy kind of pre-split adjusted VXX1 stuff dominating the top 10. Let's just do a top 5 then, because the bottom 5 is all pre-split adjusted. The number 5 here, 25,000 of the June 28 puts. Number 4, back out to VXX1 of the June 11 calls. Those are going out today, so thankfully we won't see those on the list anymore. Number 3, also VXX1, the SEP 10s, 32,000 of those bad boys. Then the rest are all quote-unquote normal VXX, and all going out today. So this is going to change pretty soon. 36,000 for number 2 of the June 29 puts. Unfortunately, for whoever loaded up on those, I'm going to imagine the lion's share of those are long. Looks like we're not going to get there today. And about almost 70,000, 68,000 of the June 30 puts. So VXX is kind of a reliable eroder, but every now and then it could break some hearts, and it seems like it's breaking some hearts on that 30 strike. It seemed like we were heading there. It seemed like kind of a no-brainer until it wasn't today. Of course, if the Rock Lobster's 15 handle had come to pass, we probably would be seeing a sub-30 handle right now in VXX today. But that's the whim of the Vol Gaz listeners, and it looks like 70,000 or so of the June 30s, and about 36,000 of the June 29 puts. All going to go the way of the dodo today. Looking at the action out there today, we got about 24,000 of the June 33 puts lighting it up. Not surprising, that's kind of the at-the-money strike right now, followed by about 11,000 of the June 33 half puts. Number 3, 7,000 of the June 33 calls, so a little bit of call action on the paper. Number 4, we've got about 6,000 of the July 28 puts. And number 5 here, round out the top 5, we've got 5,000 as well of the June 32 puts. Mr. Meatball. An interesting week for VXX, a lot of erosion until there wasn't. What's going on with you and your crazies in the pitch chat in the land of VXX this week, sir?
Well, VXX is doing what it's supposed to do, which is it's supposed to move up with the VIX futures. We always tell people, contango's great, but if VIX goes up, VXX will go up. And that is what you are experiencing right now. Now, in a month, will it be higher? No, it'll be lower probably, unless we're going into some sort of craziness. In 2 weeks, will it be lower? Probably. But that is the nature of these products on a day-to-day basis. They go up with VIX. It's just a long over time basis where the issues with those products really takes hold. And VIX futures are strong today, and it's driving these higher. Activity pretty strong in VXX today. It is pushing itself higher, and we've seen just a real nice amount of volume in VXX kind of across the board. If you give me a second, I'll give you what if anything is traded here. I got logged out of my live vol. Yeah, I mean, it is one where, when it starts to take off like this, it starts to have an actual use case. And that is what we are seeing today. Interestingly, not a lot of like size up trades. We got some buyers of like the June, some June puts that expire today. You got buyers of like SEP 20 puts that are kind of interesting. But nothing really bananas striking me in the face in VXX right now.
It's like VXX trending back up towards the 34 handle. So a little bit of more upside maybe in store for us out there in VXX land. Also a little bit of upside in store for us out there in UVXY this week. It was at about a 30 handle last show. It's up about 3.5 points coming into showtime, about 33.5 out there. The ADV also falling off a cliff since our last show. It's down 90,000 contracts to 151,000 out there right now. Again, same thing we saw in VXX. These reverse splits, they're good for volume and they're good for the product in the long run. In the near term, they cause a lot of headaches for people and they tend to crush the ADV, and that's what we're seeing out there in UVXY. Even though decent paper right now, north of that ADV, again, 176,000 contracts on the tape out there in UVXY. We'll get to all that in a second. First, let's break down the top 5 size positions in UVXY. Same deal as VXX. These are all kind of pre-split adjusted positions that are still dominating the top 10 out here. Let's just do a top 5 really quickly. 17,000 of the June 13 calls. So obviously not a relevant strike anymore. Number 4, still my favorite out here going out today. The June pars, the June 100 calls. There's about 20,000 of those still open. Someone opened those in UVXY. For the love of God, I hope they sold those. Because if they bought those, that's just yet another sad trombone. A lot of sad trombones in VXX and UVXY today. No love for the 30 puts or the 29 puts in VXX. Clearly no love for the June par calls in UVXY, of course. When they put that trade on, if they bought that, I would have told them then that's a bit of a bridge too far, probably. Number 3, 25,000 of the June 14 calls. Number 2, 30K of the June 10s. And rounding out the top 5 in UVXY, June 5s with about 41,000 of those bad boys. Coming into today, what's the most active contract out here in UVXY? No surprise, it's the same deal as it was in VXX. It's the June 33 puts going out today. 22,000 of those bad boys on the tape, followed by number 2, about 13,000 of the June 34 puts. Number 3, about 12,000 of the June 33 half puts. This is all June going out today, listeners. Number 4, about 5,600 of the June 32 puts. And the only June not expiring today, expiring next week, the June 34 calls, with about 5,200 of those. Mr. Meatball, you've said for a while now you prefer UVXY to VXX these days. What's been lighting up your tape, if anything, out there in another week where UVXY actually bucking the trend like VXX and closing the week up, sir?
Yeah, no, Mr. Bullard is lighting up my UVXY positions. Thanks a lot. It's definitely peppy. VIX futures are peppy today. We're sitting a little below 20 right now in the VIX cash index. Today could be a day where, we really take some heat, but we shall see. UVXY, the big trade of the day that has any real meaning was the June 25th 34 calls. Those have been pretty active in UVXY. Those were bought early this morning. And, other than that, it's a bunch of people playing around June expiration.
A lot of playing around June expiration. Also a lot of playing, I wouldn't say a lot, some playing this week out here in some of these single name earnings popping off this week. We still have some names popping off. Most of the season is behind us now, listeners. We still have some names popping off. Tuesday, we had Oracle, H&R Block, and Lazy Boy. Wednesday, we had Leonard Holmes. Thursday, we had Kroger. So nice disparity there. You got some software, you got recliners, you got tax preparation, you got home building, you got supermarkets, all kinds of weird stuff in the mix out there this week. And we have the reports coming in. They came in hot off the presses right before showtime yesterday, I believe. Leonard Holmes, they were after the bell on the 16th. They were pricing in 91 and about a third. They were pricing in 4.7% and they delivered 3.8%. So a little bit of underperformance there. I don't have them up here today to see if you hold it through Friday, how that's looking. And we also have Kroger here. They were on the 17th before the bell. So yesterday before the bell, 37 doubles where they went into their announcement. They were pricing in 4.4%. They delivered 1.8%. So a whopping wah there in terms of not a lot of juice in the earnings hills. But we're looking forward, Mr. Meatball. I keep calling you the Rock Lobster today. I don't know why. Maybe because he's messaging me during the show and throwing me off. All right. So we've got Darden Restaurants coming up, Mr. Meatball. That's one of your favorites. They're popping off after the bell on the 24th. They were pricing in 136.5. They're trading at 136.5. They were pricing in $7.5 in the past. They've moved $10. So, Mr. Meatball, is $7.5 in your estimation still too much juice for those oh so delicious Red Lobster biscuits, sir?
Oh, I mean, that's like all you can eat breadsticks for premium sales. Probably we've seen these straddles not work over and over again, and I would be less than surprised if this thing underperforms, joining the parade of straddles of premium buyers that have lost.
So what you're saying, if I could read between the lines there, is that you're loaded up to the gills on that Darden Restaurant straddle. That correct, sir?
What I'm saying is that if you want to go long Darden Restaurants and you're a big fan of the stock, go eat at an Olive Garden and then go to the store and buy a can of Chef Boyardee, and you tell me which is better. And then make a decision on buying the stock.
Am I crazy? They do Red Lobster too, right?
They're Red Lobster. I believe they also own the Capitol Grill, which is not bad.
Capitol Grill is good. I'll give them that.
They might own McCormick and Schmick and a couple of these other ones.
I'm not a fish guy. I hate all things fish, but those biscuits are almost worth the price of that stock right there. Those biscuits are, I don't know what unholy substance they have put into those to make them so delicious at Red Lobster, but that perhaps could merit at least half of the value of that straddle. The rest of that value comes from you folks. So let's see what you have on your mind. It is time for the volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, let's get to it with your questions, your comments. We have a lot of those, but of course, our members get bumped to the top of the list here, just like Mr. Unlimited, who's listening live. I told you we had some fans of your platform here, SAAD, and he said, this is the guy who started MIAX Shift. I love his product. Then he has some feedback for you. He says, I wish when we hovered over the stock name, it showed the stock price. That's the only feedback I have for SAAD. Oh, and I love that there are no ads. So there you go, SAAD. A little bit of constructive feedback and a lot of love for your platform, sir. What do you say?
I love that. That's a great call. We'll get that in, actually. We have updates every Friday night, and that is a great call, actually. Actually showing the name of the stock versus on top where we show it now. I mean, the price of the stock. So we'll get that in. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. If you hover over, let's say AMC, it shows me the name. Obviously, it shows me the volume and the premium. That's all relevant stuff. But you're right, it doesn't have the stock price. So that could probably be one extra bit of information to add for the folks. So there you go, SAAD. Some free product feedback. Just come on the show today. There you go. Easy peasy.
Perfect.
All right, next up, we've got a little bit of love coming from Justin. Justin says, thanks so much for putting out vol views every week. I'm pretty new to vol trading, and your show has been a lifesaver. You guys rock. Well, no, Justin, you rock, and everyone else who takes the time to listen, whether it's after the fact on your device of choice, whether you're listening live right now. Everyone takes the time to send in questions and comments. You guys are the best. You are the reason that we keep doing this and have been doing this for, nigh on a decade, at least for this show and for the network as a whole, over 14 years. Isn't that crazy to say out loud? Over 14 years we've been doing this crazy options podcast thing. We kicked it all off way back in the primordial ooze days of 2007. Pre-iPhone, if you can imagine that. iTunes was kind of like it was a dream in Steve Jobs' eye. It existed, but it was nowhere near what it is right now. So there certainly really was no Apple podcast to go to or anything like that. So you had to have an RSS reader to get it in the early days. That's how early we were on the options podcast train. And look, here we are now, nearly over 14 years later. And how things have changed and how fun it has become. Peter T wants to know have you heard any more about the approval of the new replacements for TVIX and XIV? Yeah, Mark, I know this was kind of a hot and heavy, not that long after the Volmageddon of 2018. Obviously, XIV went the way of the dodo, and there was talk. I think SEBA was even involved in putting out this new kind of flavor of XIV to try to get some more inverse exposure to volatility. It seems like we heard a ton about it, and then it kind of went away. I have not heard any updates recently. Mr. Meatball, have you heard anything about the replacements for these products? Anything on the horizon, sir?
I haven't heard anything either. I know there's a whole swath of people that want to do it. My understanding is that the regulators are pretty hesitant to let that thing go on. So that could be kind of the issue that they're seeing there.
Yeah, probably a couple of things gumming up the work there, Peter. I think that's certainly one. There are a lot of people in the business who say we should not have a product like that. And so certainly when they put that out for comment, they're going to get that feedback. And they're not, fringe people. These are very sane, normal people. And they make a good argument. They say, the brokers really kind of dropped the ball on explaining to people what that product was and how it works. And now these new ones are saying they're going to have some safeguards to avoid some of that quote unquote acceleration event that was the death of XIV. But still, an inverse product has inherent risks. And the brokers kind of just put it out there alongside your SPYs and all your other much more traditional, much more stable ETFs and kind of said, hey, here's another one you could just buy without any sort of real explanation of what they are or any sort of clicking through anything to kind of put a barrier there to say, hey, this has inherent risks that you may not be aware of. So that's certainly a reasonable position to take out there. And also, the regulators, we did just have a new administration come in. So the whole SEC and everything kind of changing gears. You got Gensler coming in now. So that's going to gum things up. And of course, they have other things on their radar too. Everyone wants a Bitcoin ETF, so they're dealing with that. We got this whole stonks thing going on. What the hell do we do with that? That's taking up a lot of the oxygen in the room. There's still a pandemic going out there wreaking havoc with the economy. So these are not exactly boom times for getting products approved. So I think it's probably a combination of all of that, quite frankly, there, Peter, that is gumming up the works out there for that. But yeah, I think I would love to see those back. A lot of people would. There's certainly a demand for that. As long as people understand what the hell the last time XIV, there was your literal grandmother from Iowa was buying that thing. And that's not a situation anyone wants to repeat. But an interesting question. I will do some digging to see if I can hear any more on the approval side. But right now, Peter, everyone else who's asking, I have not heard anything new.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the crystal ball. SAAD, I hope they prepped you for this because now it is time for the most difficult, the most dangerous portion of the show. It's where we attempt to figure out what the hell these vol gods have in store for us for the coming week. And in case this week wasn't an indication for you listeners, they can be tricky sometimes out there because coming into the end of the show, we have VIX cash still around 19.5. We have spikes at about 1965. And spoiler alert, no one had a 19 handle in their predictions. I was at a 16.05. So I was feeling a little bit more vol. Like right around the same, a little bit more vol than last week, but not a ton. Mr. Meatball was fading a lot more. He's got an 18, but not quite enough. And even Jim Carroll was on with us last week. He was feeling a lot of upside in his vol prognostication. He was at a 17.5. That seemed pretty optimistic at the time, and then it turns out to be 2 points shy of where we are right now. So all of us missing by multiple handles, listeners out there. So not exactly a winner chicken dinner, which means, SAAD, you have the ignominious honor of being able to go first because you didn't lose last week. So you are the only non-loser here on the. Tell you what, I'll be charitable. I'll allow you, SAAD, as our guest to choose. Do you want to go first or do you want to pick someone else to go first? I'll let you choose.
I'll go first.
I like it. Bravely venture into the breach. Go for it, sir.
Sure. VIX for next week, I think we come down to 18.5.
So squeezing about a point or so out of there. Interesting. That's interesting. Right. I could see that. Mr. Meatball, you were a heck of a lot closer than me, even though you were still off by about 1.5 or close to it out there. So you get to go next, sir. What are you feeling for this time next week?
All right. Well, clearly my fading strategy has finally stopped working. So it's time to go back to yield, fade this stuff. I think that they could absolutely crush vol. So, if we turn around, they are going to absolutely come after this stuff. So I'm going to go 1686.
1686 for the Meatball. An interesting year. Not a really momentous year, but an interesting year nonetheless. And an interesting prognostication for volatility. So now here, an interesting period for me, listeners. I was many handles away last week. So I deserve my penance of going last here. And we got an interesting market already. 1686 for the Meatball on the dark side. SAAD 18.5. Ooh, like I said, this is that weird one. We're kind of still teetering on that precipice coming into the end of the show. Let's see. Have we turned around at all here? No, it looks like S&P still kind of holding down that near full percent to the downside. So we're kind of almost unched from where we were at the beginning of the show. Still kind of teetering there. Is this where we're going to hang out for the rest of the day? If we're going to see the worm start turning to the upside, then we will see a lot of this vol come crashing out even by the end of the day. But if we don't, well, we got to hold it through the weekend. And then, of course, Monday is the big question there as well. So that's a long way around to saying, listeners, I think a lot of this vol is probably going to come out this time next week as well. But I'm going to say a little bit less. Now, as I'm saying it, I'm already changing my prognostication in my brain, listeners. These are the interesting periods where it's kind of fun to do this and also challenging. I'm going to bump it up a little bit. I'm going to say 17 3/4. So below where we are now, obviously by nearly 2 handles, but also above where we were this time last week. So there's your market, listeners. We got a 1686 on the dark side for the Meatball. I wouldn't be angry if his comes to pass. SAAD on the 18.5 to the upside, and myself in the, not quite the middle there, but close to it at a 1775. All right, everybody. Unfortunately, that music means we've come to the end, at least for this show here on the Options Insider Radio Network. This used to be the end of our broadcast week, but now I am pleased to say, nay, it does not end yet. If you're in our Pro Trading Legion, which is growing by leaps and bounds all the time, I didn't get a chance to thank all of our new additions that we have joining us. I've been so busy out here. Let me see really quickly. I know some folks get scared. I won't reveal all of your details to the world. We'll just say hello to Freddie and Alan and Revon and Daniel and Henry and other Daniel and Kim, a bunch of others out there who joined us just since earlier this week, just since before the showtime, actually. So welcome to all of you out there. I'd like to see so many of you diving in to the Pro Trading team. If you are part of that contingent, you get to join us in exactly an hour to talk about all things options oddities. And guess what? I recruited SAAD. He's going to be joining us to break down some of that cool stuff going on out there in the world. What's lighting up shift search from a single name? I think we're going to find out even more detail in about an hour. So stay tuned for that. If you're listening live, we're going to pump some fun stuff into the chat. You can always come back in about an hour as well. If you're listening you're listening and you're not part of the Pro Legion, unfortunately, that one is for the pro folks. They get that also on their exclusive podcast feed. So that's a fun one. Stay tuned for that. But before we go, let's go back around the horn. Obviously, SAAD, our audience, is probably already kicking the tires on this. But if they want to learn more, they want to check out all your latest updates in the land of shift search. Where should they go? What should they do?
Thank you. MIAX.shiftsearch.com. MIAX.shiftsearch.com.
And you guys do updates pretty much every Friday, right? So if they want new bells and whistles.
Absolutely. Every Friday night, there's a bunch of new features coming on. We have a nice pulse with the audience. And we're just on our quest to continue to delight the user.
Give us a hint. Obviously, our listener suggested something today, but what else can they look forward to? What are some of the new tweaks you guys have planned?
Oh, we have the ability to see open interest this weekend.
Oh, there you go. A new wrinkle. So you can have price in there soon, listeners, and you hover over. Next up, OI. Check it out for yourselves. MIAX.shiftsearch.com. It literally cannot beat the price. So get on over there. Check it out. Get while the getting is good. Maybe you have some feedback. You want to, after you kick the tires over there, hit them up. Let them know. They'll love to hear from you. MIAX.shiftsearch.com. And Mr. Meatball, if folks got questions about all this crazy AMC goodness, and they clearly do, as well as VIX and VXX and UVXY and all that fun stuff, where should they go? What should they do?
Come to optionpit.com. I'm putting out VIX content every day. So come check us out. Optionpit.com.
Optionpit.com is the place to go. On behalf of the greasiest of meatballs and SAAD and everybody over there in MIAX land, and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for listening live. All of you after the fact, we love you on demand as well. We'll see our pro folks back here in about an hour for all things options, oddities, and we'll see the rest of you back here next Friday. Another episode of Volatility Views.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about Spikes at MIAXoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution and trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.